video with Tom Scott, you say vibrato is tempo matched. Is it possible to swing vibrato? So vibrato is that natural oscillation of pitch that singers often use when they're singing sustained notes. Historically, this was used very often as an expressive device in various styles of music, not only from the common practice, like you can hear in Renee Fleming singing Franz Schubert's Ave Maria, right? The pitch is going up and down a little bit. But also you can hear it in classic jazz recordings too. This is from 1936, Duke Ellington's orchestra playing Caravan. Hear that solo trombone wavering the pitch a little bit? So in the collaboration that I did with Tom Scott, where I tuned his untrained singing vocals, I said this. Controlled vibrato normally goes alongside the tempo of whatever the piece of music you're singing or playing.
Okay. Mine was completely uncontrolled. It's just, I never even thought that was a thing singers could control.
And you can really hear that. You can really hear the locked-inness of the vibrato with the tempo. Let's listen to that Renee Fleming again. We can split the vocals from the orchestra using AI vocal stem separation. I use lalal.ai. We can then run Renee through Melodyne. And take a look at her beautifully controlled vibrato, which sounds to me like 16th note triplets. It sounds like she's really locked with the orchestra because she has that much control over her instrument and the relationship of the pitch in time. In Duke Ellington's Caravan, I'm hearing it as that triplety kind of feel too. And you hear the whole woodwind section lock into the same exact vibrato rhythmic feel. Like, check this out. Here we go. So tight, right? And part of the reason why they're so tight is because they're all on the same page when it comes to the rhythm of the vibrato.
So you're like doing vibrato on 16th or 32nd notes or something like that.
Tom Scott also picked up on the fact that these subdivisions of the vibrato are often very fast, 16th notes or 32nd notes. Now, whether or not they should be swung, I don't know. That sounds like it would be strange. I don't think I could do that very easily with my singing voice, but maybe somebody could swing those subdivisions if they so chose. I think an exciting correlation between this pumping effect of the vibrato is maybe the sound of sidechain compression in modern electronic dance music and hip hop. Like, check out Flying Lotus, for example. Like, every time the kick drum is hitting, the other elements are ducking out of the way. Maybe it's not exactly like locking in with vibrato, but to me it has almost kind of a similar feeling. Like that in and out, that push and pull, that feeling of locked-inness that an ensemble can have often comes from vibrato. Vibrato is a stylistic thing and is often associated with older styles of music and older ways of playing. So if you listen to a more modern arrangement of Caravan by Duke Ellington, like for example, the arrangement used in the movie Whiplash, you won't hear any vibrato whatsoever in the ensemble. It's a very straight tone. Like, listen. Very straight. Doesn't quite have the same mojo, in my humble opinion, as the kind of lush vibrato of Duke Ellington's early orchestra. Dang. See, a lesser composer would go for a huge ending chord, but Duke Ellington, no. He makes you wait and lets you relax into the feeling. What were we talking about again? Right, vibrato. God, I love Duke Ellington. Woo! What is your personal favorite Bach Goldberg variation and why? Personal favorite Goldberg variation is Goldberg Variation 30, the quadlibet Variation. Bach wrote a series of 30 variations on a theme, and the 30th one is a mashup of a lot of German folk songs and drinking songs that was meant to be humorous to people at the time. It was common for Bach to amuse himself and his family by mashing up songs that had nothing to do with one another, and kind of treated as a bit of a musical joke. And I love this because it's honestly kind of the same thing as that mashup account, There I Ruined It, which ruins songs by mashing up songs that shouldn't go with one another.
What you gonna do with all that junk? All that junk inside the trunk.
We find it funny, of course, because we know the historical context of these pieces of music, but we don't really find it funny with Bach because all of that context has been lost. We don't really know these German folk songs that Bach used in his 30th Goldberg Variation, the quadlibet, and so we don't find the humor in it. Instead, it sounds to us just like pretty music, which to me is proof that music really does have cultural context. You need to know the culture from which a music comes to fully appreciate the music and get all of the in-jokes that would go along with it. And so when we listen to Bach's quadlibet, the 30th Goldberg Variation, and we don't get the joke, we don't get the humor, it would be kind of like a musician 300 years in the future, listening to all of these instances of the lick sprinkled throughout music, not getting the cultural context of the lick. And so for that reason, the 30th Goldberg Variation, it's kind of my favorite. How to take music more seriously. I always feel as if I play a game or something when making music. So there's somebody that I knew in grad school who was a fantastic jazz double bass player. He had incredible chops, he really knew the instrument very well, but ended up not going on and pursuing a career in jazz double bass. Instead, he became a boat captain, believe it or not. He was very passionate about sailing, he was very good at it, and decided to turn that into a career. And I remember reading something at some point, whether it was on social media or maybe he said something somewhere, but he said that the worst thing that could ever possibly happen to you if you make a mistake in music is that you look a little bit silly on stage. The worst thing that could happen if you make a mistake as a boat captain is that people die. And so why are you caring so much about making mistakes in music? Now, you can still take music seriously in the sense of taking your craft and what you give out to the world seriously and thinking very carefully about what you present to the world. But I do think that the ultimate goal of music making, and maybe art in general, is maximizing joy. And if you think about music as a game, I think you're maximizing joy in yourself at least, and hopefully for other people who want to participate in that game. So I think ultimately you have to balance both. Take music very seriously, but maybe don't take yourself seriously as you do it. And if the big thing that you get out of music is a fun little game that you get to play with yourself, that's great. Don't let anybody take that away from you. Does getting a safe degree/job before pursuing a music career ever really work out? So I don't think that you should make any life decisions out of fear. And there are many people who are convinced to go into careers besides music, even if they're passionate about it, even if that is really what they want to do, because they are afraid, or their parents are afraid, that music is not a stable career financially. A very real possibility is you go into your safe bet of a career and it ends up not being as safe a bet as people ended up thinking. So then you're struggling, and then also not doing the thing that you wanted to do in the first place. Now, there are many fantastic musicians that didn't go on to solely a career in music. Denny Zeitlin is an example of a very influential pianist in some circles who has a full-time gig teaching clinical psychology at the University of California. Like, check out this version of Here's That Rainy Day that he recorded in 1967. Wow. Like, it has a really beautiful touch. He's had an accomplished musical career. He apparently composed the soundtrack to the 1978 horror film Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But his main gig was, and currently is, psychiatry. Now, of this career, he would say that, quote, "Sometimes people imagine that I'm a psychiatrist because I can make a good living, which allows me to do what I really like, which is music. That misses the whole point, which is that I have equal passion for both." And so what I take from Denny Zeitlin, who has a career in both music and psychiatry, is that you should be passionate about what you do. and you shouldn't make any decisions out of fear. Share your live pedalboard. Sure, here is some footage from the Jazz Cafe in London. We recently played there as part of Sungazer's European tour. I have everything going into my Relay G70, which is just a really rock solid wireless unit. That goes into this OC2 kind of sounding pedal, octave pedal, the Tim Lefebvre Octavefra pedal. Super awesome one from 3-Leaf Audio. And then all of my amp emulation and a lot of the, reverbs and distortions and stuff come out of my Line 6 HX Stomp. It's a very tiny but very, very powerful unit. It also doesn't weigh that much, which is also important for our whole weight thing with flying. And then I'm also running this Eventide H9 for some reverbs and some other things. Will Sungazer be coming to Scotland on tour at any point, please and thank you? So yeah, Sungazer is coming to Glasgow in March. We're also going to be playing a couple other dates in the UK and the rest of Europe. Go check it out. Link is in the description if you want to come see us shred tuplets live. It's a good time. 5-string bass, do you prefer a high C or low B? For me and my 5-string bass, I prefer a low B string. Because when you hear that sound through a subwoofer, it doesn't matter what kind of beautiful chord melodies you might be playing in your 5-string bass with a high C. You hear that, and it sounds and feels like the thunderous voice of God. And for me, I like to speak with the voice of God. Thank you very much. God strong. Nice. Good times. Voice of God. Have you ever considered switching your main instrument? Love the videos. From time to time, I have thought about switching to piano because it is so versatile. You can do so much with it. I had a professor, Phil Markowitz, say that the piano is like the orchestra, but in black and white instead of in color. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that I really have found my voice on bass guitar, and the things that I want to express are best expressed through that instrument. And so switching to a different main instrument means I feel like I won't be able to communicate the things that I want to. So even though the piano is so luxurious, it's not really for me. Your best memory from touring in France? Oh my God, the cheese. The cheese, the French know how to do cheese very well. We had a wonderful cheese plate at a restaurant in Clermont-Ferrand that I will remember very, very fondly. What is your opinion on keyboard bass? Lol. So when Sungazer tours, I'll often have a Moog Subfatty on stage also. I really enjoy having the different color of a keyboard bass to contrast with my bass guitar. Being able to change filter sweeps and things, and being able to access a slightly different color in the bass register is very, very freeing in a way, because I don't have to make my bass guitar sound like a synthesizer all the time. Often bass players get caught up in synth pedals, like how do I get the synthiest sounding bass pedal? And I'm very guilty of that sometimes, but it's often better just to have a bass synth and control that low end in a very particular way that bass guitar doesn't control the low end. In which the bass guitar doesn't control the low end. Prepositions. What's the secret to a good bass solo? Well, when you find out, let me know. I'm still looking for it, but I do have a couple of ideas. The first one that my bass teachers taught me was to imitate the sound and the phrasing and the melodicism of non-bass guitar instruments. Yes, believe it or not, there are instruments besides the bass guitar. I was surprised to find that out too. The big one here was always to imitate the phrasing of saxophone, particularly like bebop saxophone players like Charlie Parker. I was always taught that you're supposed to imitate the sound of Charlie Parker. This is probably for good reason, because Jaco Pastorius, the great hero of electric bass, imitated the sound and phrasing of bebop sax players like Charlie Parker when he played his fretless bass. There was a lot of the ornamentation, the vibrato, and the various melodic phrasing that goes with Charlie Parker that, well, went with Jaco Pastorius. Gotta love Jaco's playing. As one comment says, people like Jaco can outplay somebody with a standard guitar. Wow, Jaco's better than people with a regular guitar. But you don't need to do this kind of Jaco-esque thing to create an engaging bass solo moment. Joe Dart of the band Wolfpack often just plays really rhythmically tight and engaging bass lines. The band drops out and Joe Dart might play a little bit busier, but at the core of it, a bass solo is just a bass line that the audience notices. It contains all the characteristics of what makes a good bass line a good bass line. Rhythmic tightness with the drummer, logical outline of chord tones over a chord progression, and a steady driving pulse. But it's just that the audience is made to notice. So I think honestly, that is the secret of a good bass solo. A bass line that, for whatever reason, orchestrationally or otherwise, the audience has to pay attention to. Thanks everybody for watching. This has been super fast Instagram Q&A. If you enjoy what I do here on this channel, please comment, please like and subscribe. Check out my Patreon. And yeah, thanks everybody.